Disclaimer: this presentation does not reflect the collective views of Lowell High School, its staff, students, and those who worked on this project. While this presentation covers a serious topic with much debate and argument, it is not designed to be any form of political message and is made to discuss the general topic of gun control as a whole. We're just kids who need credit for this project. Amendment 2. Right to bear arms. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. U.S. Bill of Rights, effective 15 December 1791. In recent times, gun control as a topic has been under the public eye in light of numerous school shootings that have happened within the last 3 decades. Events such as Columbine, Sandy Hook, Parkland, and many more. The latest American school shootings being on 18th May, 5 days ago as of this recording. The Second Amendment has much history with the U.S., being one of the first amendments in the Bill of Rights. One subject in this nationwide contention is the gun regulations in regards to schools themselves. Other nations, such that in Asia, have shown examples of methods to lessen amount of public shootings. Another argument is in the psychological aspect of students and how schools can potentially help troubled students. School districts nationwide can enforce an increased number and higher quality of firearm regulations through considering the dangers and benefits of having firearms, analyzing how other countries regulate their own firearms, and examining the mental aspect of firearm violence.
As Arnell said, we will be talking about gun regulations, specifically the regulations regarding schools. But before we go into that, I'll talk about the origins of gun rights, the Second Amendment. As stated in the image, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. From this, there are 2 ways to interpreting the amendment. Those who are pro-gun say that the Second Amendment protects the right to possess a gun and use for defense. They say that there are other causes of death that kill more than guns. According to the CDC's leading causes of death reports, between 1999 and 2013, Americans were 21.5 times more likely to die of heart disease, 18.7 times more likely to die of tumors, 2.4 times more likely to die of diabetes, and 2.3 times more likely to die of Alzheimer's than to die from a firearm, whether by accident, homicide, or suicide. Even the flu and related pneumonia, traffic accidents, and poisoning all killed more people between 1999 and 2013 than firearms. These pro-gun views aren't just from adults, even students share these views. In fact, students from Carlsbad High School have held their own walkout called the Stand for the Second to voice these views. The other view on the Second Amendment is that that the Second Amendment was only for militias and not an unlimited right to own guns. Although pro-gun supporters say that people can defend themselves with guns, less than 1% of victims actually use a firearm to defend themselves when faced in a dangerous situation. One major factor is the fact that when the Second Amendment was written, the guns at the time were very different than now. With the new models of guns, shouldn't current regulations change too? These commercials are an example and depiction of each view on the Second Amendment. In this first commercial, a woman has had someone knocking on her door twice, and there's no one outside, so she goes to get her gun to protect herself. She's waiting. When the third knock comes, when the third knock comes, the door handle has been jiggling. Someone comes in. So their argument is, with this gun, she can defend herself. This man faints in the sight of a gun. So, as you can see, the argument is... The next commercial depicts a man walking in with a gun like that they would use from the 1700s. He goes in, he shoots, but he misses. As you can see, it takes much longer to reload. Imagine what would happen if you had more recent model of a gun. As the Founding Fathers are no longer alive, it is impossible to know exactly what they meant when they wrote the Second Amendment. But implementing new regulations isn't completely impossible, as demonstrated by other countries.
The first argument is whether or not America should change their gun laws to be only having guns for hunting or outright ban guns in general. Changing America's gun laws to only have guns for hunting and not privately owning one would mean a reduction in gun violence, such as homicides and things like school shootings. Countries in Asia, like Japan, China, and South Korea, have made their own gun laws and regulations to keep the public environment safe. The results of these countries' efforts have become something America could learn from. One of the most strictest of gun control around the continent of Asia comes from Japan. To own a gun, citizens have to take a long and tedious test and score 95% minimum to pass. In a way, it's kind of like an SAT or an ACT, simply because you want to get a high score on it. Followed by the test comes a background check to see if they have any criminal background and a mental health evaluation at a hospital. The only types of guns that can be bought are shotguns and air rifles. Handguns are not allowed at all. Shotguns and air rifles are only for hunting and nothing else. The test has to be taken every 3 years to renew the license. However, this only limits the guns to people who can use them properly, so that if somehow someone gets past the system and obtains a gun and plans to use it for something other than hunting, something like a genocide or a homicide could occur. However, a certain Asian country has made guns and violence almost pretty much non-existent. Like Japan, South Korea has taken action in trying to stop gun violence completely and have a safer environment for citizens to live in. South Korea gun regulation and gun laws has stated that civilians are not allowed to possess military weapons such as revolvers, pistols, automatic and semi-automatic rifles, and machine guns without exception. The minimum age to be a gun owner is 20 years old. The only types of weapons that are allowed are hunting rifles, but they are strictly only for hunting and nothing else. Pretty much the same thing as Japan, just a little bit more lenient due to Koreans still having to do background checks and having to train to use the weapons, but not having to take a tedious test and retake the test to renew the license every 3 years. Instead, South Korea has made it to where you have to reapply and requalify for your license every 5 years. Of course, guns are prohibited to be seen in plain view of public places. It seems that Korea has also proven that less guns equal less violence, which means less deaths. China, however, has taken a slightly different path with their gun control. China is also the same, with prohibiting private possession of firearms. There are, however, firearms for official use and for civilian use. For official use, those who can use them are police, procuratorial personnel working on investigations, and custom personnel, as well as guards and escort personnel working on important state defense enterprises, financial institutions, storehouses, and scientific research institutions may carry firearms if the firearms are necessary for the performance of their duties. Firearms for civilian use are permitted for specified work units in 3 areas: sports, hunting, and wildlife protection, breeding, and research. Hunters in hunting areas and herdsmen in pastoral areas may possess hunting rifles, but the rifles cannot be removed from the area. If America makes it to where guns are only allowed for people with certain jobs, then chances of genocides and homicides are less likely to occur.
The second argument is that schools should have a mandatory system to talk individually with students at least once a week about how they are doing in and out of school. According to the American Journal of Public Health Association, mass shooters are often mentally ill and socially marginalized. Students that are mentally ill may undergo problems at home or at school and have no one to relate to. The kind of things that a person goes through may influence violence. For example, on April 20th, 1999, 2 high school students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, murdered their classmates and teachers at Columbine High School. According to Dave Cullen from Slate magazine, they set their sights on eclipsing the world's greatest mass murderers. Dave Cullen also states that Harris and Klebold were not merely troubled kids. Psychiatrists say they were psychopaths. This clearly proves that they were undergoing some kind of trauma or illness when they were planning to kill their peers and teachers. Another incident that happened was on February 29, 2000, when 6-year-old Dedrick Owens fatally shot 6-year-old classmate Kayla Rowland. Dedrick Owens lived with his 8-year-old brother and was sent to live with his uncle. Their dad was in jail for violating parole after being caught doing massive amounts of cocaine, and their mother evicted from their home and never to be seen. To add, the uncle's house was a crack house where guns were frequently traded for guns. In Booth's article, he mentioned that 50% of all learned human response occurs in the first year of life, and that the concept of reward and punishment and a conscience is developed by the age of 3. This evidence shows that Dedrick Owens was highly influenced by his surroundings and at-home activities as a young child. According to James E. Booth from USA Today magazines, stated that school-age youth commit crimes in their own neighborhoods, and ill people living under bad conditions can develop signs of wanting to vandalize areas or terrorize people. This highly suggests that people who live in certain environments are influenced by being around gun violence, drug dealing, etc. Booth also says to consult with them, talk with them, lay down limits for them, and let them know what behavior cannot be tolerated and what will. This evidence suggests that students and children need to be talked to one-on-one. Talking to students one-on-one gives them the chance to express how they feel and can help the person listening. Also, talking to them one-on-one helps them and those in authority in check of their behavior. If students were able to talk to an adult at least once a week, it would help the student who is ill and would also keep schools and other targeted places safer. However, talking to them doesn't mean that it's the only reason that students are shooting up schools or mentally ill people. There are more factors that cause these situations, such as parents who influence their children to do violent activities by not teaching them discipline and giving them their basic necessities. Even though there are other factors that cause a school shooting, students who are able to talk about themselves and how they are managing at home can spread to others who can highly benefit from nonviolence. This spread of knowledge can help. This spread of knowledge and help can help a school's odds of a shooting become lower.
As you can see, school districts nationwide can enforce an increased number and higher quality of firearm regulations through considering the dangers and benefits of having firearms, analyzing how other countries regulate their own firearms, and examining the mental aspect of firearm violence. With increased mental health services, taking from other countries' regulations, and knowing whether or not the Second Amendment should be considered dated or not, school shootings now and potentially all shootings in the future can be avoided with refined techniques and considerations. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening.